Hello and welcome back, everyone. Today I'll be replacing the heater core in the 88 Suburban, and possibly starting on some of the AC work today. I'll probably split it up into a couple of videos at least, but we're going to go ahead and get started here on the heater core. So one thing I'll probably go ahead and do is take the dash completely off. I'm not entirely sure if you have to, but I think it's going to make it a lot easier. And there's some other stuff I want to replace. I want to replace these vents. They don't have any tension anymore, so they generally just fall down. At least these two. I think the other two work pretty well, but I may end up just doing all four of them. So in a previous video I was doing the lights in the gauge cluster. So the bezel here has already been removed. That'll be covered in my other video. As far as taking the dash off, if you have everything here still put together, it's pretty simple. As far as taking the dash off only, the only screws you'll have to worry about is, I think there's 3 across the top, or maybe just 2 across the top of the bezel here. You got to take those 2, they're Phillips. And then underneath the lip here, you'll have 4 7mm screws, and then there's a big Phillips screw here that you have to take loose. And then everything else is just, it's got a snap. It's kind of hard to, it's kind of shaped like that, and it hooks down into the main frame of the actual dashboard. And so you just kind of have to pick it up and pull it, and then it'll pop right off. The vents, the hoses just kind of snap onto them, so they'll come apart when you remove the dash. So I'll probably go ahead and get started on that now and get that out of the way. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take these screws out. They're pretty short, and they're usually not tight because it's squeezing on this soft material, so you don't want to crank down on them. Alright, now we just need to get the Phillips screw out, and it's kind of difficult because it's a really big screw, but they don't really give you a lot of room here. So I think that one's too big. You may have to take a Phillips bit for like a bit driver and just put a wrench on it. Which is probably what I'm going to have to do here. Here's a couple other tools you might be able to use for this. If you have any sockets that have the bits in them, you'll have enough room. That one actually seems to fit pretty well. But again, you could just take a bit like this and either put the open end or the box end on it and just press it, and that actually works pretty well too. So sometimes if you don't have all, well, who has every tool that there is? I mean, sometimes you just have to come up with something. Use a little imagination, make something work. There we go. Alright, now it should just pull up and just lightly tug on it. And there you go. And see, there's the vent tube. Comes right out. Then once you get this out, like I said, I'll do a video when I get the vents here, but they just have those kind of strange locking nuts that cut their own thread into plastic, and they'll come off, and you can either replace this. There's not really any reason to replace this unless it's broken, but you can replace the vent itself individually. You'll just still have to take this loose, of course. And that's what the back side of a dash looks like. I'm actually kind of hoping to maybe get a new dash there. You can get them from LMC Truck, the whole dash. They're pretty expensive. If I recall, they're somewhere around $200 or $300, I think. You can get the dash pads, which are about 100 and some, I think. And I have used those, but I don't really like them. You have to glue them down. They usually don't fit perfectly. To do it properly, you have to drill a hole in it for this, because they don't have a hole for this for some reason. Usually they only come down to about right here, so you can still see some of the undercolor. So if you don't get one that matches perfectly, which they don't have a lot of colors, then you're going to see two different colors too. So and of course, like I said, you're gluing it down to this, and it's right underneath your windshield, so it gets a lot of heat on it, and so it's got to be a really strong glue to be able to hold up to the heat. And here's one of the clips I was talking about. It actually came off. I'm not supposed to do that, but this locks onto the dash pad, and then it snaps into underneath these. So mostly they're just meant to hold the back side of the dash down. They don't really, hold it in place so much. It keeps it from going back and forth, but it's a pretty tight fit. So really the main thing is the screws across the front to hold it back, and that holds those clips in there, and those clips keep it from riding up. So now that we got the dash out of the way, I'll probably go ahead and take the glove box off, which is pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and take the glove box off now. So probably the easiest thing to do, there's 4 7mm underneath again, so we'll take those off first. Alright. Now when you open it, it just kind of comes right out of there. So it's really just those 4 screws, and it's out of the way. Alright, so your heater core is going to be behind this box right here. So we're going to have to get that out. Looks like it's got a couple of screws. There's a pin here. I'm not quite sure about that yet. So I'm going to go ahead and start taking some of this loose, see if we can get to it. And it looks like they're 8mm. 8mm. And it seems to be loose already. Okay. Takes that loose from this to some extent. There's another one on this side. And try to be careful when you're taking these things loose. They have little foam seals and stuff on them. I'm sure you could get new foam and either make it yourself or maybe find the the ones that are made to fit it. But these boxes don't really go together very tight, and you don't want to mess those seals up, otherwise the majority of your air is going to end up blowing out underneath the dash and not ever coming out of the vents. So there we go.
here. Hey, looks like we found another issue right there. This little piece of plastic's broken. That's part of the diverter valve or something that probably changes where the air comes out. I'm guessing it's probably the one that shuts off the bi-level. I've noticed on my truck. This one, I think even my Blazer, no matter where you put your selector, it still blows out of the bi-level. It'll blow out of the other ones as well where you put them. So if you put them on defrost, some will come out of the defrost, or put it on the vent, it'll come out the vent, but it's also always blowing out of the defrost. So you're not getting full air on your windshield when you're in defrost, which is, you know, it's always nice to have as much airflow up there as possible if you're using your defrost. So I have to look into LMC and see if they have this little piece. To be honest, you could probably make one, but it's just easier if you can just get the part that's made for it. So it looks like this piece is all one, all the way over to there. So I'm guessing this is going to be a little bit of a project by looking at it. So I don't know if I'll be getting into any of the AC stuff today, but it'll probably follow soon after, whenever I get this video out and finished. So I'll take this out of the way as well. And try to keep your, you know, your screws together with whatever you took them off of, especially if this is going to be something you're doing over a couple of days, or, you know, especially you know, if you're going to be doing it over 2 weekends or something. You might think as you're doing it that you'll remember what goes where as far as screws and stuff like that, but you'll probably forget by the time you get back to it. I know I do sometimes, so. Alright. So if I can go ahead and take this piece off. But so far, I mean, it's still pretty much basic tools. I mean, 7mm screws, Phillips screws, 8mm screws. This one back here is a 10mm. And also, if you're doing this, which, I mean, there's only really 2 reasons to be changing your heater core. Either it's leaking or it's stopped up and you can't flush it out. But either way, I would be cautious when you finally get this box completely loose. There is the slight possibility that there's still liquid antifreeze sitting down in here somewhere, and you take this loose and it's probably gonna dump it all over the floor. And so I got some absorbent mats. There's probably not gonna be a lot if there's any, but just something to keep in mind. Another 10 up there. That loose if I can. Let's see. Probably an 8. Okay. A little screw back in there that holds it to the upper vents. Go ahead and take that loose. It's also an 8mm. And guys, I know some of these videos that I'll be putting out, especially like the one I did a week or so ago, the brakes, they are long, but I don't want to edit stuff out, to the point of I don't want to be sitting here looking at it like this and saying, okay, take this screw loose, take that screw loose, and then pull it out of there, and then cut to a scene where I've already got it sitting completely out of the way. And I want to be able to show as much as possible so y'all can gain as much from it as possible. I mean, I don't want to be like especially like I used to work in a shop for a long time, and even some of the websites or whatever we use for information, just say something like, disconnect the battery and take these 2 bolts loose and remove fill in the blank starter or whatever. And but yet it had a repair time of over an hour. Okay, obviously you're not just removing a couple screws and taking the part out, there's more to it. But so I mean, like this right here, they probably say remove the glove box, of course disconnect the battery, because that was the thing to say on everything, even if you were changing a tire almost. I mean, that's exaggeration, but and then they'd probably just say remove the however many screws and remove it. Well, that's clearly not that easy. It's getting to the screws, or getting rid of other stuff that's in the way so you can get to stuff, or to get this part out. So anyway, I know it's got one of those pins up here. The bottom one doesn't seem to be holding too much. I don't know. It's threaded, so I'm guessing we're probably gonna have to go out to the firewall side. There's probably nuts on the back side of it. See if we can see those. It's not always easy to figure out what is on the opposite side of something, especially when you're by yourself. If you got somebody else to help you, they can kind of wiggle that box around and you'll be able to see it. But for me, I've got to kind of figure it out on my own. Alright guys, so the 2 pins that are on the inside of that box, the nuts are on the outside here on the firewall. Now unfortunately, well, fortunately and unfortunately, the pin on the bottom side of that box is also, the nut is out here, and it's underneath your box here, and it's not easy to get to at all. You kind of have to just snake your hand down under, and it's right directly underneath these heater hoses, so right under this right here. The nut is gone off of this one already, actually. That's why it was moving so easily under at the bottom. And of course the stud's really long, so you can't get a short socket on it. The easiest thing, probably without taking this off, is probably going to be to use a wrench. Maybe if you got a little ratcheting. It seems to be a 12mm, best I can tell, but it would not be an easy one to get loose, I can tell you that. It's not very tight though, which is good. It just kind of holds that box snug. It's probably got a ring of some kind of sealing band, kind of like the vents have. Insulation, basically. I think this is the only 2 pins, but we're gonna find out here in a little bit. If that box comes loose, then we're good. So I have to find an extra screw to put on that, but it looks like it's probably actually 7/16. I couldn't get it to go on there, but that wiring harness is bolted to it. But yeah, it is a 7/16, and it has the washer made to it, which is nice. So now we're gonna go in here and see if we can get this box out. And that one's loose, but the top one doesn't want to come loose. So I'm thinking I'm gonna have to take the little brace here for your computer. I'll have to take that off, I think, because it looks like it's kind of captured with that. So, and that's a 10mm. Oh, here it is. Just reach up under here. Which is also going to make your computer drop, of course. Computer. I don't know where you are, but here we're infested with these stink bugs. Alright, so the brace is out of the way. It does not look like it was connected to it, so not completely necessary, but it's actually kind of nice to have that out of the way. One bolt and you can get a little bit more vision in here. That thing does not want to come through there. From what I can tell, that is the only thing that's holding it, though. There may have been another pin down here, actually, it looks like, and that's gone as well. The whole thing. But you really don't need this kind of pin. I mean, this is so it doesn't spin when you're taking the nut loose. But you could put a bolt through this and put a washer. And then maybe put get somebody, the best thing is to get somebody to hold it with another wrench or ratchet or whatever. Or you might be able to put a pair of locking pliers and let it swing and hit the floor. And that would hold it good enough to where you could tighten the nut up on the other side. But this pin really doesn't want to come out here. And of course, you've got all your cables and stuff too, but right now there's plenty of slack on those. There's your other diverter. So this would have diverted the air to the vents. Yes. Right now it's going to bi-level. And with that broke in it. Anyway. I'm going to see if maybe the heater core is actually bolted into that box. I'd assumed that it would just cover it, and you'd pull that black box off first, and then the heater core would be bolted somewhere inside. But it still doesn't seem to want to move, and it's this side that's catching. So I'm going to go ahead and take the hoses loose. So if it is connected, it can just pull through it. So I got these hose clamp pliers from Advanced. I'm not entirely sure how well they're going to work. They make some really nice pairs of them that are metal, and they have kind of even more rounded edges. And this is actually kind of sharp edge. I mean, not really, but the ones that I'm used to are rounded on this part right here, so it'll just squish the hose. But I couldn't find those. This is the only thing I could find. So I'm trying to prevent as much coolant loss as possible. It's really hard to catch coolant when you lose it from here. There's no reason to drain the whole system. I mean, the hoses are up high. You're not going to have a lot of coolant level. So if you can just close them off with these, it'll be a lot easier. But you can see that these don't completely close all the way, but of course you're going to have the material to make up some difference. But anyway, I'm going to see how well they work, and
we'll go from there. You can also use vice grips. I did buy one pair of well, not vice grips. I'm gonna start that crap already, I guess. You can use a pair of locking pliers that are needle nose. Especially if they're new like this and they're really sharp edges, you want to take something and put in between these and the hose, because it could rip them. If they're really new hoses or whatever, it's probably not gonna matter, but I always like to at least take a like a red shop rag or something, put over the hose first and then clamp. Yeah, I don't think these hose clamps are gonna really accomplish anything at all. They're not even strong enough to close them off. So, to be honest, I would not waste your money. One thing luckily with these is you can take them, once you get them loose, you can hold them up and maybe tie them or shove them into here, and that'll put them above the fluid level and they shouldn't leak. So we're gonna go ahead and take these loose. And also, you might have to take this loose. So you can get that hose moved as much as possible. Alright. I like to just get the clamp way out of the way so it doesn't get caught up. And then, especially if hoses haven't been loose in a long time, they'll be stuck. Try to twist them first. If you pull on them, it's not going to do anything really. I mean, it's... So another thing, since it won't twist, you can take a flat screwdriver and put behind the edge of it and see if you can pry it a little bit. Go ahead and take them both loose and see if maybe the red one looks like it's probably been replaced not too long ago. It's a lot stiffer. Of course, it may have fluid sitting in it, but if worse comes to worse and you cannot get them off, one thing you can do is just take a razor blade and cut them, which I may end up having to do on this one. So you more than likely have enough hose to cut a couple inches off of them and still have enough hose to reconnect the same hose. This one I've definitely got enough. So I'll probably just end up cutting these, just slit them across here, and then you can take a screwdriver and you can usually get them to come off pretty easily. But if the hose has been on a long time, they're really hard to get off of there. I mean, if it was something where out here where you can get to it easier, you can get it off, you can get a pair of pliers on them and try to rotate the hose. That'll usually break them loose. But back in here, it's a lot harder, and sometimes it's just not worth the frustration to try to get them loose when you can just cut, you know, 2 or 3 inches, probably not even 3 inches. It ends right here. So you're talking about an inch, inch and a half, maybe 2 inches. And if it's really soft hose, you should just replace them anyway. This one's actually got some damage here. I think I have some heater hose. So this one is, like I said, pretty new, I think. So I'm not worried about that one, but it's got plenty of length to cut a couple inches off and be fine. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut these. Split it. And then you should be able to just take a screwdriver and just peel it. You can see how the rubber is just practically glued itself to the metal of the heater core. There we go. See that clamp is pretty much doing nothing. So, and this is a really soft hose. This is an older hose than that red one. There should not be any reason why a pair of brand new hose clamp pliers don't work. That actually works really well. So if you stick it up through there, you don't have to worry about it leaking all over the place. And of course you want to, if you do lose any coolant, you want to try to catch it all in a pan. Okay, so while I was working on the heater hoses, my GoPro decided to somehow burn through its battery life in about a quarter of the time. But anyway, so I'm trying to use my other camera here. It's not going to be as easy, but I got both of the hoses off, and I've got them stuck into the hood so they won't, you know, gravity drain out. And I'm going to go see if the box will come out of the inside now with the heater cord disconnected from its hoses. It's definitely moving, I'd say, easier. It's just this top pin doesn't want to come loose, but I do have the nut loose, so I'm going to try not to block the view too much with my arm, but again, I have to use this other camera and it does not go on like a GoPro. There we go. Came loose. So the heater core is apparently bolted directly into this, so that means we're going to have to take all these little brackets loose, or the wire loose from them, so we can actually get this completely out to get to the heater core. So and in order to kind of reiterate on the heater core, take your dash off and take the glove box out. Go ahead and get your computer out of the way. It was one bolt, so it makes it a whole lot easier. Plus it'll give you a little bit more height room. And then you're going to have to get, there's a nut on the back side of this pin on the firewall side. The bolt I took loose does not look like I needed to take that loose, so there's that. So basically your two bolts that travel through on these pins, there's a nut at the top on the engine side of your air box where your evaporator is, and then there's one on the bottom of this box. There's one down here. It's kind of hard to see right now, but you'll be able to see it a lot easier once I get the box out of here. So, and then of course you have to apparently take your heater hoses, because the heater core is apparently actually bolted into this. I had assumed it was just held it, you know, covering it, but so take your hoses off too. And
So now I'm gonna have to take all these loose, so we can actually get the box at least turned enough to get to the heater core. Again, I know this is not going to be as good an angle as my GoPro, but I've got it charging. Hopefully I can get it to come back to life here later on, but for right now I'm going to have to use that. So I'm guessing these are probably 7mm screws. It's even smaller. Alright. I'm trying to keep the angle so you can see. There's a little clip here you just have to pop up, a little spring clip, so you can get the harness away from it. It looks like there was another one back on further back, and it just kind of popped loose on its end. And there's a vacuum hose you have to disconnect at the very end on a diaphragm. Figure out which way it's going. It's already off. Okay. Alright. So really the only thing I need to worry about now is this. I was trying not to have to take, it's got one of those little washer things, basically have teeth on it, so you can push it down easily, but then their face pointing up, so then to take it back off you kind of have to pry on them. I was hoping not have to take that loose, but I think that's probably going to be the best thing to do. And of course, they have a tendency to, once they come loose, fly off, and so try to keep a hand on it or something to keep it from flying off. But alright, got that off, put that up, and then take that piece off. So, and these do not tighten up, just so you know, they're just screwed into the plastic, so as long as they're flush with this, don't keep cranking on me, you'll just chew up the plastic and then they won't actually stay in there at all. You can see I'm using this tiny little 1/4 inch wrench, and that's, just speaking of which, these are 1/4 inch, so they're really small as well. So just keep that in mind. Alright, now we can take this off, put it back there, and it should be completely disconnected, except for there's another vacuum hose here you'll have to get off there. It's on the back side, so, but it's just a hose, so just pull it off there. Alright, let's see how easy, or I should say, let's see how difficult this is going to be. It's pretty difficult. Not really any way to twist it out of there. There we go. There goes all the coolant that's in it. So, there's some good news. There was 2 air hoses apparently on the back of that diaphragm. Alright. Get you guys back in view here. Alright, so there's the edge of the heater core. It's a copper one. I did not get the copper one again. I got an aluminum one. We'll see. The copper one's, I think, was probably about twice as expensive. I'm gonna take this over in the shade where it's a little bit easier to see. There you go. Got a couple screws on the cover here. This is, and there's where I was leaking. You can see it green down here. So anyway, I'm gonna take these screws off so we can see the whole thing. So there's your 2 1/4-inch screws here as well. So the copper heater core was about probably twice the price. I'm hoping also the aluminum will hold up better. I mean, copper is going to corrode. I mean, I know aluminum can as well, but I'm hoping the aluminum will work fine. So, after much poking around, there's supposed to be a screw here and a screw back here. You don't have to pull this up too much. It's already basically unglued at the edges anyway, probably from the antifreeze and not intentionally. Let's see if that can give us enough room to get this thing out of here. So in this part I was just trying to figure out how to get it apart, but there was the 4 screws that are on the flatter part that's closer to the camera, and then the 2 that I took apart earlier up at the other end. There was 2 under each corner of the foam with the pieces of foam coming together there. And then basically you just had to separate and kind of pull the inner and the outer parts away, which you'll see, and then that separates the pins that those pivoting doors turn on. And then you don't really have to take it completely apart, but basically where I've got it here at the end of the video section here, is enough to get the heater core out.
The heater core was leaking pretty significantly. So now we get the new one, and hopefully it's the same. So there's the new aluminum one, and it matches up perfect. However, I found a piece that's broken in here that the only way to replace it is going to be to have it like it is with open. There's a bolt down in here that you have to take loose to remove that piece of plastic that's broken on that baffle. So I think for right now I'm going to leave it the way it is for this, and I'll come back and make a second part video of putting this back together just so I can get that fixed. I think it's one of the baffles for changing the direction of flow of air, and like I mentioned earlier, it blows out of the bi-level all the time, which I think is why it's doing that, is because this is broke, so it's not actually pulling this correctly.
It is getting all stuck in there, and if it's not in its
Proper place, it's only going to move that baffle so far, so it's splitting the air instead of changing it completely. So I want to get that fixed. So the good news is this works. I can put a link in the description for it. I got it from Summit Racing. There's the part number for it, 94552. It's a Spectra. So anyway, and I don't know how many years this covers, but it's definitely works for the 88 Suburban. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully it won't take me too long to get the parts to fix this piece and to get back out here and finish this project and get the second part of the video up on. And again, I apologize for the change in camera angle. My GoPro just, like I said, decided to burn through its battery really quick. Hopefully this will at least work well enough. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you like this video, if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to be notified to see more videos coming up in the future. Share it with anybody you know that might be able to benefit from this video, and we'll see you later. Thank you.